So the round 16 is underway at the World Cup, and well, our opening two games we see some controversy as well, of course, which we will get to, because the main talking point I feel from the one of the games we saw last night wasn't the football. It was well, not exactly the football. It was well, the behaviour of one team and the referee's performance. We'll come to that. But we'll to recap, starting with the first game that we saw, which was uh, Canada against Morocco. Now, both these two have been on a good journey so far in this tournament. The build up to this game, Canada getting out of the group in second. Morocco only missed out on top in their group on goal difference. So both of them impressive. Morocco, particularly though for the group stage, looking very strong, very convincing, and did really well against the Dutch, probably the better side, and getting to go from penalties. And as for Canada, they just found a way past South Africa. The one concern was though the fact that they seemed to lack the cutting edge. The goal come right at the end, and they had created a lot of decent chances that they didn't take. And there's always going to be a worry coming to this game. Not having Fonzo Davis fit is always going to be a worry. But Jonathan David is very good in front of goal. Will he be able to get the chances without Fonzo Davis just beside him? And then you've got obviously Cone obviously had that horrible injury as well, so he's going to be out for this game obviously as well. So they had players out, and you do wonder maybe a fully fit Canada could it have been a bit closer in terms of the score. I do feel the score in the end doesn't do Canada justice really. I feel like Morocco with a better side deserved to go through, but 3-0 was a very harsh score in Canada. It doesn't tell the full story of the game. But I mean, first, to start with, they start the game really well. Canada, the first 20 minutes, I think they're on top, I think they're the better side really. But Morocco, they do have a knack of staying in the game and growing into it, and eventually they do get the upper hand really in that regard. And the thing with Morocco is they don't gift away chances. They're very solid defensively. So when you get chances, you have to take them, and that's one thing Canada has just not been doing in this when it's got to the knockout stage. Canada to get to round 16, it's their best ever tournament, it's their best ever run, it's their best as a host. They've been fantastic. The crowds have been fantastic. And to win the first World Cup game and to push on since that point and get to here, I think they deserve a lot of praise, and they definitely can't say a bad word about it. They can take so much from this tournament. I think this tournament for Canada, it's come to an end, but you can only say positive things. It's just unfortunate that the scoreline maybe wasn't a bit more favourable for them yesterday, because it doesn't. Look, you would see the scoreline 3-0 and you would not picture the game that we saw if you didn't watch the game. But yeah, very impressive Morocco as well, and they set up what they got through to the quarter final, and in the end they set up a repeat of we see this sometimes. We see games that are repeated, and it's a repeat of the semi-final of the last World Cup 2022 when they play France. So that's going to be always going to be an interesting game. There'll be a story there, no doubt. Whatever happens in the game, I'm sure it'll be an exciting occasion, an exciting game. And like I say, Canada, they started this game well, but Morocco, as I say, they slowly grow into it, and it is going in at the break. Still feels like anyone's game, really hanging in the balance. We did wonder, could this be a game that goes the distance? And I do think that on a different day, maybe it could have been a bit closer. But Morocco are clinical in front of goal, and they're clinical with their counter attacks, and they're effective. And because they don't gift away many chances, they're going to win a lot of games. And I think they're 6th ranked in the world, and that's because of how strong their record is through qualifying, through their continental matches. They win almost all their games in the African competitions in the qualifying through Africa as well. So that's why they've got such an impressive record. And when you see them now, they're an established top team now. They're a real threat. They're the team that can go far in these tournaments, and they're proving that. Now that they're one of the serious teams every time, and to be at the quarterfinals is already like a really good run for them. But they'll be looking beyond that. They'll have ambitions beyond this, and it'll be really interesting to see how they approach the next game, with it being such a big one. But of course, they get the move to get themselves in front just after half time. It comes at a really big point in the game, because at that point the game was still looking like it could really head in any direction. It still looked like anyone's game. And Canada here are completely caught out. It was a really, really good move from Morocco with the free kick. They don't swing into the box like I was expecting, and they go to the edge of the box where there's someone unmarked, Anahi, and he's able to pretty much pass it into the net. The wall couldn't do anything. The keeper couldn't do anything, and it just slots it round. Really, really good move. Morocco in front, and from there, Canada chasing the game. It becomes a lot harder. What is a concern for Morocco though? Of course, this was the one negative. Sarabi, his injury. Yesterday, that was a real unfortunate blow for them, and really missed the next game as well. That could be a worry. But Morocco, they do carry on, keeping control of this game. They don't give Canada a look in, and that's the key. And then ultimately, they're able to kill the game off in the end. And it was up until 80 minutes. It was, very, very, it was a fairly close game. Morocco just had a bit more cutting edge about them, but it was in that final 10-minute period I was able to pull away. Anahi gets his second, and then right at the end, of course, Rahili gets one as well, and that gives Morocco the 3-0 win to get their place in the quarterfinals. So really, really impressed with them. Fair play to Canada for the tournament they've had though. Going on to the next game, the game we saw later on, this is where all the controversy is. This is what all the talking points to be about last night, and probably for the wrong reasons, if we're being perfectly honest. But Paraguay take on France in Philadelphia. We always knew this could be, maybe because of the conditions in this game, probably the hardest we've seen at the World Cup so far. To be honest, 39 degrees in Philadelphia, so it's always going to be maybe a bit slower than some of the games we've seen, and it was going to be very hard for both teams. Really, going to be a challenge for both teams, but. The first half, France definitely dominated the ball, but it very much felt like Paraguay were in the game. And I have to say as well, coming into this with Morocco getting through, it was like, if there could be an upset here, if Paraguay do get through, imagine how that would have opened the tournament up, Morocco and Paraguay on that side of the draw. But, France are always going to be the favourites here. But you do never know, because Paraguay defensively have got much more about them than Sweden, it was always going to be a different sort of test for them, and it was always going to be hard work, and it certainly was that. Not in the way I expected though. I expected Paraguay to be similar to the way it was against Germany, organised and good defensively. And I can't say they wasn't good defensively, but what I can say as well is they played extremely dirty, and it got worse and worse as the game went on. And that was the sort of that's what teams that's what Uruguay used to do years ago. They sort of pushed the dark arts too far, really. And there's a place for a bit of that in football, but they pushed it too far. And the second half, that's not football. That's not what people want to see, and it was a bit. It really was a disgrace. Really, there's no other way you can describe it. Really, they did not cover themselves in glory. They earned so much praise. They earned the praise of everyone after the Germany game. Everyone now, has got a low opinion of them, and it is a shame. But because this tournament, they've been good, really, and they've had one of the best ever tournaments they've had, and they've been good at times to watch. They've been good, and they've done themselves proud. But going out yesterday, they don't, they have, made, they didn't carry themselves well at all. And the first half, it very much felt like, maybe they could do it. Maybe it's the type of game they could win. First half was not too bad in that regard. France having some shots off target, getting into some good areas, but not quite getting the final ball. But Paraguay having some chances as well, felt very even. France having more of the ball, but overall the game felt like it could be. There was a chance for the upset with it going into the break at 0-0, and the game did start. We did start to see the sort of warning signs of what might happen though in that first half. We see a few silly challenges already from Paraguay at this point, but in the second half it got to the point where Paraguay actually had a couple of decent chances at the start, but once France start really stepping up a notch and getting into some good areas, and Paraguay didn't really have an answer to the fast pace that they moved the ball at faster than Germany, and because that was the thing, they didn't play like that against Germany. They were just good and organised defensively, and in this game it slowly started to descend into a complete carnage, and the referee lost control of the game, and he could have got control of it sooner, booked some players, but he didn't. Not a single Paraguay player was booked for the entire game, and that's where France will feel like, well, the referee was just blatantly on their side, was just blatantly working against them. And I think Paraguay took full advantage of the fact that, really played on the fact that, the referees have been told clearly at this World Cup to let the game flow a bit. There's some weird rules about you can't see to touch the goalkeeper at all, or else you get the goal chalks off and some weird rules like that. The first game was a bit all over the place. 3 players got sent off and they shouldn't really even have been sent off. But since then, it's been very, for the majority of the games, the majority of the things, it's been just letting the game flow. And that's what people want to see. But quite quickly yesterday, that descended into something that people do not want to see, and the referee lost control of the game. And that was a thing where I think France will feel really, have the right to be really, really annoyed. It's the fact 2 of their players got booked for fair enough, their bookings, but the same challenges pretty near enough that were being put in on their players earlier. For challenges that could injure their players, challenges that are unnecessary, to be quite frank, and that could get the players injured. And the fact they're not picking up the bookings for them ones, Paraguay and France are getting them later. That's why they will feel so hard done by. But overall, I thought the France managed the game perfectly. I thought France really, really kept their heads well. There was moments where they started kicking off a bit, but at the end of the game, but can hardly blame them. Paraguay were deliberately goading them, trying to wind them up, trying to get them to, particularly on Mbappe, trying to get him sent off, trying to get him to retaliate, just trying to pick a fight, and that isn't football really. And like I said, there is a place for we want to see physical games. I want to see that type, there's maybe not enough of that in modern football, but there's fine lines, and that descended into something else yesterday. Just complete. There was the game in the final half hour. The game had no flow to it. It had no, it was just fouls going in left, right, and centre. Every time France wanted to try and counter attack and try to play their football, Paraguay put a stop to it by putting in the foul, and the referee allowed this to happen. And this is what people have said about Paraguay after the game. They have got an extreme amount of criticism. I can't say it's not justified. there's people are saying they're a disgrace, and this game's now got its nickname as well. And I wonder how long this will stick for. It's been called the disgrace of Philadelphia. We'll see how long that sticks for, that lives on for. But a lot of people are saying it. I just wouldn't want to win like that, because there was obviously, particularly I think at half time, they said, okay, right, we're going to win today, and we don't care if we have to cheat to do it. And we've seen teams do this before, and you could argue sort of Uruguay have done this in previous tournaments as well. I mentioned them earlier, and stuff like that, and they've got probably would at the time, I imagine, would have got similar levels of criticism to what Paraguay got yesterday. And it's fair enough. But when the penalty comes, the penalty foul wasn't even the worst one, but it was a trip. It was a penalty 70 minutes in or so. It was when it was actually taken after the lengthy VAR check again. Mbappe slots it home, but before that, there was Paraguayan player trying to scuff the penalty spot, trying to basically mess it up and stuff like that, and the referee just let that happen, no booking as well, and stuff like that is really what I think the referee's been really called out for this as well. And it's very rare that commentators, pundits call a referee out, but that happened yesterday. He was called a complete disgrace as well. And to be fair, I can't argue with that. It was really, really poor, and it was disappointing to see. It was not what people wanted to see. It's not the football people wanted to see at this tournament, but majority of the games have been fantastic. But France, they still was able to play their football eventually. They were still able to come through it, and clean sheet there as well. They push on. I know France and Argentina are the 2 favourites. They've not, over the last couple of days, they've not had those performances from the group stages, but as simple as France weren't able to yesterday. And I thought overall, given the circumstances, I thought France could not have done any better yesterday. I thought they were fantastic. I thought they managed the game perfectly, and really kept their heads well as well. And they've shown they've got that side of their game as well. That even if you want to try and wind them up and try and go down that route, that don't even work against them as well. And it's a shame. That's not, like I say, it's not what we'll see. But when it gets to that point, there's people don't mind games that are played with, people want to see more than anything games that are played with passion, games where it kicks off, games where players really, really fight for it, and you want to see the emotion, and you don't mind seeing I like to see the scraps sometimes. I like to see it get games that do get like that, but there is a limit, and it comes to the point where for half hour yesterday, no football was actually being played, pretty much. And yeah, that's why I can sum it up really. But France, love a clean sheet, they get through, and I have to play Morocco, and I have to say, a lot of people said, everyone knows how good France's attack is and that they can outscore anyone. If there's any weakness, though, people always said it was the defence. I've not seen anything to suggest that so far, I have to say. Of course, they're going to get some big tests, much bigger tests for that defence to come. But I think Spain are probably the best we've seen defensively, but I think France, other than that, I don't think there's anyone else that's France are particularly behind in that regard as well. I think I don't think I don't think that's an issue for them. I really don't, and particularly as they score so many goals. Yeah, don't think it's an issue. But overall, France and Morocco definitely impressed yesterday in different ways. They have to do it under very different circumstances, but they're the two that get through in our first round of 16 games. And England are up tonight. It's going to be England are on tonight, so it's going to be a late one. But bring it on. That video will be coming out in reaction to that game tomorrow.